Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Joe Theodore, and welcome to the July astrological forecast. So, guys, Cancer season. We have been in Cancer season for about a week, right? Summer solstice, the full moon in Capricorn on the same day as the summer solstice. The end of June, post that full moon, really kind of set us up for kind of some pleasant astrology to really start July off, And to be quite honest, July doesn't look so bad. And when I say bad, I'm really just referring to any seriously hard aspects similar to like a Mars-Pluto square or any sort of intense oppositions. Because most of what we're dealing with, I feel, is a shift from the Gemini stuff to Cancer stuff. Mars will start having an influence, more on certain things. Mars will have a conjunction to Uranus, so that's something to look out for. We've been anticipating that conjunction since considering the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction was so profound. And as far as Pluto is concerned, we're going to have an opposition to the Sun, once Pluto gets into Leo, mid-July. And once Venus and Mercury, well, not Mercury, but once Venus gets into, Mercury and Venus, once they both get into Leo, they will be making oppositions to Pluto. So Pluto will be providing some major impact to the beginning stages of Leo, which will be happening in July for all the personal planets. And then really, other than that, we're dealing with, Saturn will be influencing a couple of things, still. Saturn will still be providing influence to Cancer in the way that I was describing in the last 2 weeks. And depending on when you're watching this, I'm just assuming that you've been watching my channel in the last week or so that I've been posting content on the end of June. But if you're new, subscribe to the channel. I hope you can, give me a chance here on YouTube and stick around. And, I talk about a lot of different things here, astrology education and just, maybe some major things that will be happening in the future. And of course, highlighting major things that go on during the week. And then other than that, honestly, guys, again, I have a lot of notes. We're going to cruise through all of the dates that I have written down. I'm going to show you the charts on the screen. But other than that, other than what I just said, as far as challenges goes, I don't really think we're seeing many challenges as far as what the current time-space reality transits are showing us. I think Mars is going to be very supportive still in the beginning of July, as Cancer season moves forward, because Mars will be providing those sextiles that are really appreciated, I would say, to anything going on in Cancer. Extra energy and support from Cancer, or from Mars to Cancer. But then we have a new moon, which is awesome. We'll have a new moon. And then we have another full moon in Capricorn. So this is kind of an amazing Capricorn moment for all of us after all the stuff we've been going through with Gemini and even still talking about post-eclipse season. And then the Gemini new moon was a very profound moment for kind of social and communication connections. And the Capricorn new moon, I think, story happening twice is to really take our lives seriously in something. It's really time to kind of step up to the plate in some area of your life. And the first wave of this Capricorn new moon we had recently, I think that was a big lesson and a big awakening or realization that that's something, that we need to focus on. Like I know in my life, there's a new development in my life and in something else, just some personal stuff I won't talk about. But there is an element of taking life seriously and to pursuing, something in the working field in my life. Because I have a couple of different things going on, in regards to my astrology work and, other work I do. as far as research is concerned. And I think this Capricorn new moon is really going to be asking us again, what do we need to focus on and take seriously? You know, what do we need to continue building and working on and pursuing? And taking seriously, you know, that Saturn, you know, discipline, right? So, yeah, guys, I don't want to ramble on too much in this introduction. So why don't we get right into the forecast? So July 3rd, this is the first day that I have for us to unpack a little bit. So yeah, guys, I mean, as far as my forecasts are concerned, it really is, you know, taking the days I feel are most significant, discussing them to the best of my ability, you know, not going into super detail, because if any of these transits are important enough, which I could already see that July I'll be making very specific videos on some of these transits. So I'm not going to like waste all my time and energy, you know, right now going into all of the intuitive downloads that already have come to me, of course, but what naturally we'll start channeling through now. Because the way I work, I mean, you probably noticed my tendency to ramble is because I just intuitively kind of, you know, channel stuff. You know, I'm not saying I'm a channeler at all. Like, actually, I think most channelers are actually faking it, or they're psychologically damaged a little bit and they think they're channeling when in reality they're just using their mind and their intellect and stuff they've learned. But there is an element of stream of consciousness that can be a little otherworldly. Excuse me. And I really have to train myself to not talk so much about certain things, just so I can, like, you know, not seem like a babbling brook over here. But most of these transits, guys, that I discussed today will somehow come up in a future video throughout July. So if I don't seem like I'm taking enough time or being a little too much, if I'm not being caring enough over a transit or something I'm going to talk about, it's not that I'm just brushing it over to get through the video. It is because, like, I will get ahead of myself and I want to save that for other videos. So July 3rd, Saturn in Pisces trines Venus in Cancer. And then Mars in Taurus will be concluding its sextiles to Cancer. So as we begin July, the sextiles Mars has been providing to Cancer, the Sun, Venus, and Mercury, right? Well, the Sun will start to be, you know, will be more influenced, so the Sun, Mercury, and Venus will be really starting to head out of Cancer, right? And Mars is like, I think, you know, it's not even at 20 degrees. I mean, you can see on the chart exactly where Mars is in this on this particular day. But the influence of Mars sextiles in the strongest of sense is starting to dwindle, right? You can see how the planets are moving towards the end of Cancer, and Mars is moving towards the middle of Taurus, or wherever you see Mars right now. But Saturn in Pisces trine Venus in Cancer. Yes, Saturn's trines to Cancer have also been very supportive. So not only have we had one of the malefic planets, Mars, actually be in a good place and be friendly to a beautiful sign of Cancer, the mother, the nurturer, the sensitive one, the one that, you know, wants to connect us to our feelings. You know, we also have another malefic, Saturn, giving another supportive aspect, the trine. There's nothing better than the trines and the sextiles. So we have Mars providing that supportive action and assertiveness, right? And that will. And Saturn providing structure and stability in a positive way. And these are all energies we can work with. As you know me by now, intentionally using shamanic astrological magic, which simply just translates to co-creating with a transit. Knowing that the form of the energy will be present, even though you won't know the details of how a transit will manifest, the form and the energies are always present in there. And we can put our intention for what we wish that transit to do for us. Like for me, if I have an intention from Saturn to say, hey, there's this one thing in mind happening in my Cancer part of my life, in my Cancer quadrant in my birth chart, I would really like you, Saturn, to help me out, kind of stay more grounded and give me the energy to be focused, right? And to overcome any challenges that come my way. That would be putting an intention to literally work directly with Saturn, right? I've opened a portal for us both to co-create in an efficient way. Or the Mars sextiles, over the last couple of weeks, I've been saying, hey, discuss with Mars. Hey, give me the strength and the courage and the action and will to conquer any challenge that might come up from, for example, the Chiron square to Mercury that I talked about in one of my more recent videos, right? So it's important to have these discussions with the planets, guys, not to be woo-woo and all that. And if you want to check out my course, Mapping the Soul, if you're watching this on Patreon, it might not be out yet, but if you're watching this on YouTube, it definitely is out yet. So I have a teaching portal that's on my Patreon page. You do not need to be a Patreon member to purchase any of my classes. You pretty much just simply purchase them. You can stream them forever, I guess. And I'm building a whole library of classes there. But in Mapping the Soul, I talk a lot about shamanic astrological magic and shape-shifting and, going back in time and using certain journeying and meditative techniques to literally work with the planets, and then I have a whole philosophy that philosophical teaching I offer in those classes that kind of break down the way I view the nature of reality and how astrology actually fits into our lives. I really take some crazy metaphysical approaches to what I teach in that class. And of course, the beginning of the class teaches you about astrology, and then there's a lot about healing and integration in that class. So if anyone's interested in what I'm talking about when it comes to communicating with planets and using shamanic astrological magic, it's nothing like weird and occulty. It is just straight up how we co-create with life every day, because we don't even realize how alchemical every moment of our life is, Anyway, July 5th, new moon in Cancer. Awesome. Put some new intentions into the Cancer part of your life, right? New intentions in an emotional rebirth type of way. Something will be rising and calling for some kind of a renewal, right? In the emotional part of your life. In the last couple of weeks, I've been talking about potentially with the new moon in Gemini, then concluding with the full moon in Capricorn, there could have been a lot of relationships built, a lot of new connections and love interests made, even if that love interest has something to do with learning or intellectual pursuits or business. New friends, not necessarily romance. But as that Gemini story carried over to Cancer, I claimed that, there could be, a falling in love. There could have been some of us who were in a process of really falling in love and really sensing a deep emotional transformation in something, involving the communication and the Mercurial and the Venusian, right? Because they've been traveling together with the sun essentially all through Gemini and into Cancer, all those beautiful planets. So the new moon in Cancer, I think, is a moment for us to, really plant new seeds now in a Cancerian way, and to really do this from an emotional place, a very sensitive place, to really identify with how we're feeling in whatever part of your life specifically Cancer falls into, which is where this will be most activated. But, just generally speaking, whatever you feel is going on in your life in this fall, I feel like a lot of us did, have had an opportunity to kind of fall in love somewhere, to really have a heart opening or kind of an emotional release. And this new moon, I think, is a perfect opportunity on July 5th, right after the 4th of July, of course, to again, like really make a new intention here, to wipe a slate clean, or to, open a new page in that notebook and to begin to write a new story or a new wish, And then Chiron in Aries squares Venus in Cancer. So again, there's going to be a healing moment with Chiron as well. So there could be something in the Venusian that comes up that's a little challenging. So, even though I was just talking all lovey-dovey in a way, and even including Venus in some of that new moon energy, when we're dealing with Chiron, we're also dealing with some stuff that we maybe dealt with during the eclipse. And that's also important to understand because Venus did travel through Aries, around that time as well. So try to, this new moon potentially could also have something to do with the eclipse story, right? And something in the Venusian realm. So maybe some of you may have to let go of love, and this will be a new moment of release, right? So maybe some of you will have to conclude some of those stories that recently happened in Gemini. Or you may have a moment of healing involving whatever connections you've made recently. And maybe that was going to help the Chiron Aryan identity aspect of the eclipse that might have come up for you. So again, that's just something to keep in mind. Again, the specifics are very hard for me to detail for you unless I have a reading with you. Because again, if you have a reading with me and we go over all these transits for July, of course I could, your story will be crystal clear to me and we'll be able to get through this together. And then Mars and Taurus will sextile Saturn and Pisces. So now we have the sextile going the other way because Mars is now getting to a place in Taurus where it is getting to about 19 degrees. Yeah, this should be 19 degrees Taurus for Mars and 19 degrees Saturn for Pisces. Now, again, another supportive energy. I think Taurus, for Mars's sake, will be activating some grounding there. I think Mars, if it's a little too fiery, I think Saturn is going to provide some structure and maybe some, I don't want to say like a roadblock, but there could be an element of pause for Mars, right? Like an element of like, hey, hold your horses, like calm down a little bit, right? Because it's now going to be preparing Mars to start applying itself towards Uranus. So really starting kind of like, I don't want to say mid-July, but like the end of the first 2 weeks, around the 2-week mark of July or the week and a half into July, we're really going to start sensing the Uranus energy that Mars is, moving forth towards. So I think the sextile in Pisces is going to be much needed. I think it's going to be like hey, let's calm down a little bit. Let's slow things down. Let's things will just sort of calm down for a moment, if that makes any sense. And whatever's going on in Pisces, of course, Mars will influence that, with a little bit of added assertiveness. So again, I think it's going to work in both ways, where Mars will give some Saturn energies that have maybe been stalling out, a little bit of extra oomph to, move the ball along. And Saturn will be providing Taurus with a little bit more, pause and disciplinary understanding, if that makes any sense. Now, July 6th through 10th, I don't have a chart for, but I just wanted to note that Jupiter in Gemini will be sextile to Mercury in Leo for pretty much like those days, 6th through the 10th. I think we're going to see, again, and Mercury was so activated in Gemini with Jupiter, I think we're going to see during those couple of days, I think we'll see some expansion in the way that we communicate, in the way that we process information. I also think anything that might have been triggering and coming up during Mercury's time in Gemini, that also might be something that could be re-expanded, or there could be some new profound revelation involving the intellect and the mind and things coming to you, in a mental sense. So again, I think the mind during the 6th through the 10th will be very revealing in thought, however that manifests. So, and we're dealing with Leo energy now, as Mercury has entered Leo. So this is also something that's important, So Mercury will be sort of freshly in Leo, I don't think I put a chart up for that because I wanted to talk about this specifically before I get to July 11th. But Mercury in Leo will be starting its, I think a lot of the things that might have been kind of claimed in Gemini and in Cancer. Now that Jupiter is like kind of providing its first aspect to Mercury again in Leo, it's almost like, okay, Mercury is now supercharged with fire and now wants to, kind of have the confidence and the, energy to kind of just be able to communicate what it believes in now, confidently. So I like that. For a couple of days, we're going to have a lot of that energy, until July 11th, which I do have a chart for. So Saturn in Pisces now will trine the Sun in Cancer. Okay, so similar to when Saturn in Pisces was sextiling Mars a little bit, or trining Venus in Cancer, we're now going to, when Saturn trined Venus in Cancer in the earlier part of July 11th, we're going to have that same vibe hit the Sun now. So again, whatever's really being illuminated and highlighted in the Cancer story for you, Saturn will now also provide extra support in structure, right? So things will get more orderly, things will make more sense even. I don't want to say Saturn will delay or block anything because we're dealing with a trine. If we were dealing with a square or an opposition, I would say there would be massive delays, there could be some blocks, and a lot of frustration with not being able to move forward. But at the same time right now, Saturn is Saturn, but we're dealing with a trine, and I think this is going to be somewhat supportive to the Sun, which means, we're going to feel that the progress and the structure is going to be very beneficial for us, right? And this will be a very inspiring Saturn energy. That's something maybe I didn't mention in some of my in the last couple of minutes, that because Pisces is an inspirational and creative and kind of boundless field of infinite water, Saturn there is, really going to provide, the insight in a very visionary way to whatever, is going on, especially in Cancer being another water sign. So Saturn will be providing, the structure in a very fluid and kind of overly emotional energy. So I think if most of us can learn how to structure and manage our emotions, that would be pretty much like Saturn in a water sign. Let's try to organize and structure and discipline the way our emotions are so we can better master our emotion, right? And I think Saturn and water signs want to be able to help you master your emotions so they're not going all over the place. And then also July 11th, Mars starts forming its conjunction with Uranus. Okay, so we're starting to now feel that energy get a little more intense. And then Venus is at the anaretic degree of Cancer. So Venus will be preparing its departure to head into Leo with Mercury. And the more Mars comes in contact with Uranus, the more I think on the world stage we're going to see a lot of sporadic, out of nowhere, chaotic conflict, aggression, anger, but also in a positive sense, we're going to see a lot of, sudden, just sudden, sharp revelations, that could be very profound in nature. Because you have to understand, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are the transpersonal planets, which means they're a very psycho-spiritual, they're very psycho-spiritual energies, meaning they're very shamanic, meaning not only do they affect the physical world, the psyche, our experience, but they also can provide like sharp transformations that seem like they're just a little bit more profound than your everyday life. So Mars activating a planet like Uranus will be, in a positive way, providing us like very sudden and aggressive surprises that can be very, very inspiring and really inspire us to take more action in our life, So, but again, in the shadowy of senses, this could be like sudden attacks on countries, I know I don't want to talk about the Middle East, but there's like a lot of threat from some new Middle Eastern nations wanting to attack Israel. So, if for any reason like Iran or Hezbollah wanted to attack Israel out of nowhere, or if there was some sort of, major, warlike event that happens, like we can kind of chalk that up to a Mars-Uranus, right? Now, July 12th, Venus ingresses into Leo. So, kind of just talked about that before. Venus will now be entering Leo. And in Leo, Venus will now have an opportunity to kind of shine her own light, to not be so, sensitive and receptive, which is always a beautiful thing for the feminine energy signs, planets, I mean. But in Leo, we're talking about, being passionate about beauty, being, engaged with beauty and courageous with beauty, and, taking love to the next level, the passion of love and connection. And how this is going to be influenced in a very communicative way because Mercury's there influencing Venus. And then the sun still being in Cancer, the sun will eventually be following right behind both of those planets once again. And it will just be a massive communication. I mean, I think whatever the stories have been with your Venus, Mercury, and Sun, they're just sort of vibe shifting through all of these zodiac signs right now into different stages of energetic evolution. And Venus getting into Leo is just, again, it's like a reawakening of this passionate Venusian. So we can definitely get excited maybe about that as we head towards mid-July. And then mid-July, July 15th, Mars-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. Again, very hard to speculate what that can end up being. But, everything I just sort of said before is, again, always know where this is happening in your life. The Taurus part of your life will be where this gets activated. Since there was so much activation already in Taurus during the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction and the new moon in Taurus and all that other fun stuff, we can kind of anticipate activations in those parts of our life that might have been affected prior. So that's very important to keep in mind here for this activation. And personally, I think Mars-Uranus is a great combination for, a lot of awesome surprises to happen where we are going to feel fired up about, so there's a lot of moments where there's a moment where we could feel real fired up about something, like a shocking surprise that really, brings some excitement into our life. Or, guys, I hate to get, again, like I said, with the negative, this could be car accidents. This can be sudden accidents. This can be sudden conflicts and sudden rage fits, war on the world stage. So Mars is a wild card, but we need Mars in order to literally, physically assert ourselves into the world to conquer, manifest, attain, So again, we'll talk more about this probably in July. We'll talk more about what's going on with Mars and Uranus. The more the news and the media unfolds, there'll be more to talk about as well. Now, July 19th, Mars at the energetic degree of Taurus sextiles Neptune retrograde in Pisces. So Mars will, at the energetic degree, be influenced, like every planet that has reached the energetic degree of Taurus in the last 2 months, will be hit with this kind of foggy Neptunian strangeness, right? Some of us may get inspired creatively in a very Martian way. We may feel a little bit more creative and want to take action on some of those creative insights. So again, that really all just depends on what's going on in your life and actually what might have happened with the recent Uranus Mars conjunction. So, again, we'll probably talk more about that in a upcoming video in July. And now we go to July 20th. Mars ingresses into Gemini, forms an immediate trine to Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. So again, we've had these aspects from Pluto when Jupiter ingressed, when Mercury ingressed, when Venus ingressed. So we've already been dealing with the energies of what this potentially can feel like. And again, trines are a little bit more supportive. So again, I feel if we track and map what Mars has been doing for you through Taurus, through the conjunction with Uranus, through maybe what happened at the anaretic degree with Neptune, Pluto, I think, will be that moment of transpersonal awakening where something will transform in a very massive way. So again, on the world stage, this kind of worries me a little bit because Mars is really going to be in very, very deep aspects to planets that are very shocking, transformative, and potentially have the opportunity for destruction, but also rebirth in the most profound ways. So in a positive way in our life or on the world stage, we could be seeing things manifesting and things occurring that are very necessary for change and very necessary for understanding, what the truth is in the world and what the reality is potentially of something. In our personal life, this can also translate to, again, just revelation, shamanic transformation, right? So Mars will be providing some fire to this trine. And again, because it's a trine, I'm not sensing this to be, something cataclysmic or anything like that. If it was a square or an opposition, I would say there might be a little bit more to worry about or be concerned about. But yes, that is July 20th. And now that Mars is in Gemini, we're going to be dealing with a Mars that is very activated, involving the mind, involving the way we think and communicate. So, some of this activation with Pluto additionally can involve, mental states, mental activities, communications in the world, miscommunications in the world. Or, we could be dealing with kind of like cyber attack stuff. We could be dealing with anything that has to do with the dualities and the way things are interconnected as well. And on a personal level, this could be great. Mars in Gemini, the last time Mars was in Gemini, I think we had like some massive retrograde there. I think that was the last time Mars was in Gemini. And there was a lot going on involving communication and communication breakdown and communication conflicts, but also passion in the way we communicate, right? So we're going to see, an amplification in Gemini. And now that Jupiter is there too, we can really expect a lot of expansion, and a lot of things to, kind of merge into our consciousness that can be even psycho-spiritual, So we can have a lot of we might have some spiritual fire manifest in our life, and however that, translates for you. And again, whatever house topic this is what will be getting activated for you with Mars and the Pluto trine. So between the trine to Pluto and Jupiter, and now in the house, with now Mars in the house of Jupiter in Gemini, we can, I feel this is a very spiritual time for Gemini. It's a very spiritual time, a time of transformation, a time of abundance somehow accumulating in the intellect and the mind and communication that is life-changing, Yeah. July 21st, the second full moon in Capricorn occurs. Mercury in Leo squares Uranus in Taurus. So the second full moon in Capricorn, again, I think is our second round. And this is at the anaretic degree of Cancer. So again, we're at that final degree of Cancer before it heads into Leo season. So this is important to really consider here, because we're dealing with the tail end of the Cancer story in your life. We're dealing the culmination of whatever the new moon in Cancer, kind of, might have, what your intentions and your feelings and emotional systems and what was going on in your life at that moment, what was that story about? Because now it's going to be concluding at 29 degrees Cancer. And again, the Capricorn story in your life and generally speaking, whatever else dominantly is going on in your life, something is being asked to be taken seriously. Taken seriously, do I need to get rid of this now? Is it not working? Or taken seriously, like, do I need to persevere, and be more stable and structural in something, to continue on with my vision, in this particular Capricorn idea or ideals, whatever is going on in your life. So again, whatever house topic Capricorn is in is most likely what is being most affected. But again, astrology and the current time-space reality can affect multiple dimensions of what your life is what's really going on in your life. But yeah, that's the second full moon in Capricorn. I mean, this two full moons in the same sign are a little rare, but it happens. Mercury in Leo squares Uranus and Taurus. Okay, so we could be seeing sudden, undesirable news. We could be getting undesirable, sudden communication breakdowns. There could be things involving communication, generally speaking, or just anything that has to do with thinking, dialogue. Maybe things that have to do with actual like technologies can be affected. I feel like Mercury and Uranus have very, very bad track records, or challenging, I should say, track records of systems failing or cars breaking down. Not necessarily car accidents, which would be more a Mars, Mars Pluto, Mars Uranus kind of vibe. But Mercury and Uranus can be, systems collapsing, not being able to access accounts or cyber attack, and cell phones breaking, just technology getting screwed up. Anything that has to do with the way we communicate, can be affected suddenly. So that's something also to keep in mind. And I'm not saying that would have any association to the full moon in Capricorn, but it is a little synchronistic how that's happening on the same day. So there could be some links, maybe not, I don't know. Maybe we'll dive deeper into that in a future video. But again, if you connect with me one-on-one, we will be able to dissect this. If you're interested in what's going on in your life, joetheodore.com. July 22nd, Sun ingresses into Leo and forms an immediate opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. So we have that full moon moment, and then we immediately get body checked like in a hockey game into the boards from Pluto and Aquarius, direct opposition. So oppositions are, especially to the Sun, to Pluto, they can be challenging, but in the best of ways, a good challenge, And again, challenge is different for everyone. For me, Pluto opposite the Sun, especially when we're dealing with Aquarius, we're dealing with whatever themes of your life are that axis, right? Those themes of your life are going to be affected by this. But the opposition to Pluto is really just like, how do I put this? Something in your psyche will be kind of maybe flipped over a little bit, for just a little bit, like for a day or two, right? During this opposition period. So something with the full moon, potentially, that activation will provide you with a transformative insight on a very deep psychological level, right? A very Scorpio type level. So something that could be even a little dark, something that might be unpleasant in a very psychological way. So when it comes to the Sun, the illumination of spirit and ego and personality, persona, a destiny point in our life, when we're dealing with the beginning of Leo, there's going to be a moment of psychological transformation, insight, intuition, psychic, something. But I think it's needed. This will be a very needed, opposition point that will set up the rest of Leo season and whatever is going to be affected with Leo season. And I think this is going to be a very important opposition. So challenging, struggling, hard, conflicting, violent, I don't know. Maybe in the worst of cases, we can see some of that unfolding. But Or, we can see maybe a very tragic world event happen where something very, very kind of catastrophic shakes the world, right? But when catastrophes happen, sadly so, in the world, like, for example, I don't want to bring 9/11 into this, or I'm not saying anything like 9/11 is going to happen, of course. But when you have catastrophes happen in the world, sometimes everybody drops their fucking, their disagreements and hate towards each other, and people come together, like the entire world came together to embrace, like, New Yorkers, right, on 9/11. And a Sun-Pluto opposition can provide, something massive like that, But the challenge, the beauty that comes out of that is this unity of, love and the sun, right? But I'm not suggesting that's happening in your life. I'm not suggesting something the world stage will happen, but it is a reality of astrology in this opposition. But for me, I think there's going to be just a deeply psychological revelation or something that allows you to see something from a new, deeply psychological perspective. And that will translate into the Leo part of your life. And then the rest of Leo season will be kind of, set up, and ready to go from that point forward. Now, July 3rd, Sun in Leo sextiles Mars, or July 23rd, sorry. Sun in Leo sextiles Mars in Gemini. So literally the next day, the Sun will be sextiling Mars, which again, I've been referring to Mars and those sextiles to Cancer almost like a bodyguard helping you in times of challenge. So the Sun sextiling Mars immediately after the Pluto opposition, I think is going to be like, again, this knight in shining armor that's going to be there to protect you, to guide you, and to give you, very, very fiery inspiration and just the assertiveness to start Leo season the way it needs to be started, right? So a fire planet in the sign of communication, and Mercury is in Leo, so there's going to be a lot of, again, psychic, mental, psychological insight into the progression of how Leo season begins. So to me, that's great. That's great. Because anytime that communication is in the mix, I think there's always an opportunity for dialogue for there to be solutions, right? But, again, when we're dealing with fire signs and Mars and after a Pluto opposite the Sun, and again, because Pluto is in Aquarius, I do feel on the world stage, we're going to see a lot of stuff. The world stage is going to be wild as far as astrological events for the years to come. I think we're in a cycle right now where it's going to be just nonstop mayhem in astrology. Both beautiful and very challenging, but just, again, historical is probably the word to use. And because we're a part of history, being alive during this time, most of our lives are going to be one with the historicity of everything. So this sextile from Mars, I think, is going to be supportive for most of us. I think it's going to be, inspiring and is what is making me think the Pluto opposition won't be so bad, because we're going to have a rebound. We're not going to be down and out and depressed. There could be other aspects in the sky, that instead of Mars sextiling, there could be, a square, there could be something, like Neptune squaring the Sun after a Pluto opposition to the Sun, which would make things even more confusing. But again, that's not the case. We're dealing with Mars and Gemini sextiling the Sun right after a Pluto opposition, right after a full moon, our second full moon in Capricorn. So there's a lot of shifts and transformations. And again, the progression of this summer has just been, wild. It's really been interesting. So there's a lot to be taken advantage of here, especially with, shamanic astrological magic, being able to co-create with a lot of these planets is, it's just so much is happening where we could, to the best of our ability, at least attempt to use magic in our benefit. So, So yeah, that's also so important, guys. And again, in my masterclass, my mini masterclass, Mapping the Soul, I talk a lot about this stuff, astrological magic and co-creation. Now, to conclude the forecast, July 26th, Mercury ingresses into Virgo and forms a loose square with Mars and Gemini. So it's not a direct square, it's loose, which means it's not going to be so profound, not going to be so direct. But Mercury gets into another domicile. Aside from Gemini, Mercury also rules Virgo. And so, yeah, we're going to start getting very serious in the way we think. We're going to start getting very precise and organized and analytical. And this square with Mars is, again, Mercury squaring another domicile sign, Gemini, with Mars there. So, again, the Martian meets the Mercurial. You know, we're going to see, again, maybe some assertiveness in a challenging way. Maybe you might have some opposition from some Martian things and people in your life. You know, there could be more argument coming towards you. There could be challenges involving how you want to act, you know, and how the acting that you want to do through the mind that you already have the ideas. So again, acting, you may have the ideas and the logic on how to do stuff, but the Mars may kind of block your action to doing it, might make it conflicting or challenging to do so. So, but again, because it's a loose, you know, because it's very loose, it's not going to be as intense as I think it could be. So, again, that's definitely an aspect we'll talk about in a future video. Because I think the Mercury ingress into its domicile sign of Virgo, along with having a pretty, you know, decent square to Mars in Gemini, I think it's important to talk about that one. So definitely expect a video on that in the future. But yeah, guys, that's all I have for you for the July forecast. I do hope you found this informative. If you stay to the end, thank you very much. I appreciate you watching the whole forecast. If you're new, please subscribe to the channel. Whoever is here at the end, of course, hit the like button. That helps the algorithm share my channel. Leave me a comment to just tell me how you feel about July. What are you looking forward to? What are you nervous about? And again, if you want to book a reading with me or take any one of my pre-recorded classes, all of the links are down below. Just click around, go explore. And yeah, looking forward to connecting with you if you do decide to reach out to me. And yeah, my friends, that's all I have. And I will see you in the next video.